I serve in both a decision-making capacity and an advisory capacity to the mayor and city council. There are two types of public hearings that this commission conducts. The first is the legislative hearing, whereby we formulate recommendations on certain land use requests. My recommendations have been forwarded on to city council, who makes decisions on legislative matters. The second type of public hearing is a quasi-judicial in nature, meaning that the requests are specific to a parcel of land. I'm authorized to make decisions on requests for special use permits, variances, preliminary time extensions, and planned unit developments that do not involve the subdivision of land. However, any decision I may make tonight is by no means final. Anyone that believes he or she has been aggrieved by my decision has a right to file and appeal city council. On quasi-judicial requests that involve the subdivision of land, rezones, and annexation, I am authorized to only make recommendations to the city council who will make the decision. The hearing procedures, as required by Idaho Code, are as follows. 1, staff will first present a report on the application. 2, the applicant or the applicant's representative will then present a summary of the request. 3, testimony of those in support will be taken, followed by testimony from those in a neutral position, followed by those in opposition. I will allow the applicant or applicant's representative rebuttal. 5, after rebuttal testimony is given, public testimony is closed, and no new oral or written testimony will be allowed unless I elect to reopen the testimony. The time limits for testimony are as follows. The applicant will receive 10 minutes. Those in favor, neutral, and opposed will each receive 5 minutes for testimony, and rebuttal will be 5 minutes. I accept oral and written testimony from those in attendance, but only if you sign the sign-up sheet to speak and have been sworn in. When testifying before me, you must come to the podium, state your full name and address, and acknowledge that you've been sworn in. I ask everyone to treat all parties with fairness and respect. I will not tolerate any outbursts. I also ask that those in attendance please turn off your cell phones. I am a volunteer hearing examiner and receive small compensation for my efforts. I am charged by law to keep a clear record of the proceedings, consider factual testimony, and to stay within the city's and state's rules and regulations. We, the city staff, thank you for your courtesy to us and to others as we move through the process. This evening's agenda, I'm going to move one of the cases forward, and that is the new business section 3, item 1, the action item on case number SUP 21-000012, request by Barks and Brew for special use permit for dog park drinkery. Will be moved to the first item of business, and will follow the order for the remaining items. And with that, I would like people to be sworn in, please.
Everybody who is going to testify needs to stand. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you all very much. With that, I'd like Mr. Mass to go ahead and please make your presentation on the SUP 2112.
Mr. Applicant, this is the case SUP 2112, request Barks and Brew to receive a special use permit for a restaurant dog park. Application you have before you is applicant is requesting approximately 37,000 square foot food bar and dog park Dog Parks, Bark and Brew. It'll be located off of 21st Street. The property is located at, the industrial zone, identified on the comprehensive map as manufacturing and production. To the north of the site is light industrial, to the south, service commercial. The east and the west is light industrial. The portion on the east side is service commercial. You have the staff report comments from the engineering department. In particular, I would mention regarding access to the property viewed by its staff. We'll be coming off of 21st Street. As you see on the aerial, see Indian Creek. Access will be coming off of 21. The area of Indian Creek that comes to the back. We have a site plan of the project.
One moment, Director Mack. I forgot to ask you to please state your name and address.
I'm sorry.
Have you been sworn in?
Road map, land director for the city of Caldwell, 621 Cleveland Boulevard.
Thank you very much.
In addition, there's not sewer on the site. There's 16 septic tanks. According to the engineer, is that requirement is to be hooked on to sewer. The applicant will have to make an application to the city of Caldwell. Has an existing septic tank tested. If it's allowed, may be able to use it, but generally, city sewer are connected to it. As shown that on the aerial, it is adjacent to the floodplain. I should say it's adjacent to Indian Creek. It's not in the floodplain nor in the floodway. According to the assistant engineer, the property is under consideration. It's in the back portion of the property. As you can see, there's a structure on the north right side. That's approximately what the parcel is. Then it goes further, and actually that direction is west. Then follows the border of Indian Creek. Planning department has a few comments regarding this application. One is that the parking lot needs to be as required by city code. The applicant stated they will have some exterior lighting from the site. Need to be directed into the property. I don't want to say adjacent properties. There's also a proposed fence to surround the project. They identified they will provide a black iron fence and that's been the site and then staff. The applicant is required to have 12 parking spaces. Meeting the requirements in chapter 7 of the zoning ordinance. No artificial turf is allowed on the site. They also identified how they're doing dog waste on the site. The stuff has been removed. The applicant may want to explain that. We have condition 8.2.12 that the applicant is required to parking project. That's my understanding. Answer any questions they have.
Thank you, Director Knapp. I didn't hear the number of parking spaces required. How many parking spaces are they providing?
I counted it as the structure has to be a container car. And on your site plan, okay, right here. I think it was 8 by 32.
I'm sorry, what was the number?
8 by 32. The applicant can verify that.
Okay. Thank you, Director Knapp. I have no further questions. With that, I'd like to go to the applicant to make their presentation, please. Yeah, state your name and address and get sworn in, please.
Ms. Jake Whitlock, my address is 203 North 21st Avenue, Caldwell, Idaho, 83005.
And you get sworn in?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, please, and speak up close to the mic, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
To verify the parking spaces, we will be doing 5,000 square foot parking lot with an estimated 20 spaces for the park. I don't have any initial presentation unless there's any comments here that anyone would like to ask specific questions. I'm happy to answer them. The park is a 37,000 square foot park with that will be private membership based for the community. It is a shipping container bar that serves coffee, beer, and wine 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. The park will be open up during all those hours. During those hours, we chose light industrial zoning, particularly because of the sound ordinance issue. We wanted to stay as far away from residential as we could, and we have a consultant out of Colorado who recommended that we try and get special zoning, particularly to avoid that issue and to avoid any frustrations with residents. The entire land plot of the 203 area is owned by the same owner, so we will not have any easement issues or anything like that, as well as the possibility to expand and develop the Indian Creek going forward in the future. On that, I don't have any other things that I'd like to add to the project right now.
Thank you, sir. I do have a couple of questions. Well, first of all, the site plan that I was provided is very sketchy and very small. I'm really having a hard time comprehending the plan itself. So I've added a condition of approval to that effect to get a more detailed site plan. Is that something you have available, or is we have everything prepared so far? Or do you have a larger version of that site plan?
I do have a larger plan that I can send you, would you like me to send it over to you guys, immediately?
Well, I've conditioned that as a condition of approval, potentially, but, typically with special use permit, I've got to have all the information. It seems a little, short on that. And along the same lines, I'm not seeing anything to do with the building elevations, what the building is going to look like, the lighting, the fencing. We have a photo of a fence panel, but do you have building elevations present that you could share with us?
We're building it all in flat land and working with the local engineering team who just pulled out the specs for putting the shipping container on a tiling foundation plan. Which basically where the plot is going to be leveled and go from there. So everything is going to be, the elevation is going to be 0 for the entire property.
But is this, I mean, give the impression it's like a shipping container structure, is that
Yes, that
what
is
you're
correct.
proposing? And even though we're all seeing that, you know, I'd have to see what this looks like. And, you know, with the finished detail, you know, anything that's going to be visible, particularly from the frontage, and how that's going to appear in the public space. So I've presented another condition of approval to that effect. You know, really like to see more detail. I understand the concept, but this is binding to a very specific plan or plans, as the case may be, and we have very little to work with.
I had originally provided the city with a more detailed site plan of the actual plot, and then I provided a revised plan to show access easement, the easement plan. I believe that's the one that you're seeing. We have another site plan that is more zoomed in on the project, as well as initially we provided the city with a report of a 3D rendering of the project showing the actual aesthetics of the unit as well. I didn't have a picture of it digitally with me that I can share with you, but I do not have a physical copy on hand.
Well, that would be really good. Have you provided that to staff?
I did originally during our roundtable hearing.
Okay, well, this would be the time and place to present that kind of evidence. And we don't have a copy, you know, this is.
Can you email that to him?
Yes.
I mean, like right now, just
Yes, you'll have a chance to testify to the fact, matter of fact, we could go on. I don't know if anyone's signed up, I don't think so. But if you have that on a thumb drive or something,
Yes, I can pull it up and forward it to the city in an email right now.
okay. While we're discussing this, I also propose a condition, very standard, that the structure facilities have to meet the American Disabilities Act requirements. That was an addition that felt necessary for this. One other question as far as the operation of this, what are the requirements as far as like a tavern license? What do you have to do in order to have the ability to sell alcoholic beverages?
We are just doing a standard beer and wine license, primarily selling folks this coffee. So just a beer and wine, we will not be selling any liquor.
Okay, and is that through the city of Caldwell or through the state of Idaho?
That would be through the city of Caldwell.
Okay, thank you. And could you also tell me, on the interior, what kind of seating you're going to have in the interior?
All exterior seating, we're planning on 40 seats for the establishment, all outdoors. The interior seating is only gonna be for staff. There'll be 3 areas, a ADA restroom in the container, and then a small storage room, and then a full bar top area.
So you're not gonna be open during the winter or when it rains?
We're gonna provide outdoor heating.
Oh,
But we
okay.
do plan on being open in the winter.
All right, that's good to know. So this is the one that's in the, staff report. The revised one looks completely different from that. Is that what you're talking about?
It's the closest one I have immediate copy to right now. There's slight changes on the newest one that the staff has for easements. We slightly moved the container, but that's essentially as close as I can get right now.
Okay, well, we have that in the staff report, and that was replaced by an exhibit dated December 12th, I think.
The staff asked me for to see the entire easement. You can zoom in on it. I can, or add that one to the staff report.
Well, my understanding is the one you're showing me now was superseded by Exhibit 5, from the 2/11/21. And now I'm confused, you're telling me which one is which, because now I'm totally lost.
The changes on the plan, the revised one that the city has is the most current one. This is the only zoomed in version I have right now. The only additions we made on the new one were adding in the easements on the, one that the city has right now.
Okay,
And ingress and egress on it as well.
all right, well, thank you very much.
You guys have physical rendering of the project as well. Are you able to open that?
It was waiting for permission.
You go back and click on that. There you go. That should work.
Well, Mr. Whitlock, we just don't have a good picture of what you're proposing here. And, what I think I want to do is, at this point, I want to close the testimony and, close the hearing and, make a motion to table this to the next available hearing.
Okay.
And, we'll be looking for the information having to do with the elevations, expanded site plan, detailed landscaping plan. I have some, I sketched out some proposed conditions of approval that address that, showing the ADA facilities, these kinds of things. There's just not enough information here, Mr. Whitlock, for me to make a final decision.
Sorry, I was not aware that that was during this meeting. I thought the city had everything that they needed in our roundtable meeting to proceed. So my apologies.
Well, I'm sorry for that, perception, but I've got to see a finished product in front of me, something I can hold in my hand, have the public evaluate that finished product, and have an opportunity to testify on it. I appreciate where you're going with this use, but without a little more detail in the application, I'm afraid I just can't make a decision this time, so.
Can I share one more rendering with you that I think might address some concerns right now?
But the issue here is that the public hasn't had a chance to review this. I haven't had a chance to review it by the staff, and so I think the best course of action is just to set this to the next possible hearing, and you will provide us with that detailed information.
The examiner had that information, just trying to present it. I was under the impression that you guys had all that material already, so. Here's another rendering of the park that I can provide as well, if you can see that.
Well, sir, this does not correlate to this map right here. They're two different things.
Right, they've had site updates that the city's having, and we just haven't had new renderings created. And the essence of the project changes slightly with how we have the layout, but this is for the public to understand what we're actually creating to the best that we can right now.
It's still not a complete package, sir. I'd like to make a motion on this tonight, but
okay.
I'm simply going to need the complete package in front of me and in front of the public to make an informed decision. And so with that, I'll close the hearing and close the testimony. I don't have anyone else signed up to address this issue, and so thank you very much, and we'll take another shot at it next time.
Okay, thank you.
And, Mr. Mapp, do we have a hearing date?
It will be the fourth week in April. There's the 12th week of planning and zoning, so it will be April 26th.
Okay, I'll close this hearing and set this table to the next available hearing of April 26th, 7 p.m. in this room for the hearings examiner, and will require a detailed site plan, elevations, colors, a complete picture of what it is that is being requested. And with that, I'll close this hearing. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda, under old business action item, reopen public hearing for specific legal correction conditions of approval. Ms. Root, would you provide the testimony of Mr. Mapp? Okay, Mr. Mapp, would you please provide the information for that?
It's Will Mapp, I'm Director of the City of Caldwell, 61 Greenfield Park, and I've been sworn in. On January 25th, we had a public hearing on Canyon Village Apartments. During the proceedings of that hearing examiner did 5 conditions for that hearing. One of those conditions stated that the applicant shall enter a development agreement. After that hearing, I spoke with the city attorney. He stated that he could not enter into a development agreement on a special use permit. So, based upon that, I rearranged conditions in the staff report, bringing that forward to you as an amendment for the set of conditions. period. The applicant noticed that some of the comments from engineering not pertain to a particular application. During the public hearing, it was mentioned about a plaque. This is not a plaque, it's a special permit. So anything that references plaque in, and it's more into comments from engineering was struck, changed, subdivision changed to special use permit. I've marked in your staff report the comments that were in the from the engineer, and they've been crossed out. But those you can see was changed in black to some to special. I did not mark those, just made those changes. So as of today, we have a total of 19, so there'll be 17 conditions. Condition 8.6 will be struck. That's it, will be struck from the original public hearing. Condition 8.13 deals with the development agreement. So once those two conditions are lifted, we'll have a total of 17 conditions to application. What I will do is, approve these changes, or make a change in the final document, have that sent to you, signed. I spoke to the applicant's representative. They asked if they should be here this evening. I spoke to the administrator. That's been already made. She's doing the cleanup today.
Okay.
Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. So, are you looking for a motion from me on this, or?
What I'm looking for is for you to accept that your as is with conditions, striking out 8.6, 8.13, and I'll rearrange the conditions so we can total 17 conditions.
All right, thank you very much. And that will do, is there any public testimony on this?
No, sir, it's all administrative.
Okay. And with that, I'll restate the motion for this action item, to reopen public hearing for specific legal corrections and conditions of approval for case number SUP 2116, special use permit request for Canyon Village Apartments consisting of 316 residential housing units on 15.44 acres located approximately 900 feet from the southwest intersection of East Homedale Road and Caldwell Boulevard on parcel R30899 and 50. The subject property is zoned C3, service commercial, and the amendments to that, to the conditions under the conditions of approval will be amended as follows. We'll drop condition 8.6 and drop condition 8.13, resulting in 17 conditions of approval. And with that, I would forward that on to City Council as needed, and close this portion of the hearing. And thank you, Mr. Knapp. Is there anything else on that?
No, nothing else, sir.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to the next item on the agenda, which is the Woodhaven Properties application. Open the hearing for SUB 21-40, continued from February 8, 2022, the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And it's request by Woodhaven Properties, Inc. for approval of preliminary plat for Woodhaven Subdivision. And with that, I'd ask the staff to make the presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner, Debbie Root, 621 Cleveland Boulevard. And I have that going.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
This application is to consider a preliminary plat for a development Woodhaven subdivision on 1.28 acres to create a total of 4 residential lots and 2 common lots. They will have to complete View Drive from its current sub location through to Indiana. The preliminary plat is in substantial compliance with the zoning of R1 in this location and with the codes and policies for the city and state statutes. Staff is recommending approval of this development, and I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Root. I appreciate your staff report. It's quite thorough and leaves me speechless and without question. So with that, I would like to ask the applicant to make the presentation, please.
Thank you. Nicolette Womack, Kimberly Horn, 110 West Idaho Street, 3210, Boise, Idaho, 83702. And then, I have been sworn in.
Thank you, Nicolette. Please.
Thanks. So tonight we have Woodhaven Subdivision before you tonight, and then.
Would you speak to the mic, please?
A little closer, okay.
Thank you.
If we could go to the next slide, thanks. Perfect. Thanks so much. So as you can see here, we are at the intersection of Polk and Indiana Ave. We're about 1.28 acres in size. This is zoned R1 low density residential within a C of R1 zoning. The comprehensive land use map shows this as low density residential as well. We're staying consistent with the zoning and the comprehensive land use. We are at 4 buildable lots shown in red with the non-buildable lots shown in gray. So our average lot size is about 0.22 acres. As you can see, the perimeter setbacks are shown with the dashed line. View will be punched through to Indiana Ave, and we agree to comply with the conditions of the staff report, which dictated that access on Lot 2 come off View Drive, and there be no direct access to Polk or Indiana. So we agree with those conditions. The front door, as specified in the conditions for Lot 2, will face Polk, and then we agree to provide the 15-foot landscape buffer along Indiana and the 10-foot along Polk. Regarding the remaining of the conditions from staff, we'll maintain those square vision triangles. There will be no direct access to Indiana or Polk. We'll walk through the access and the front orientation on Lot 2, Block 2, 15-foot setback in Indiana, so we can respect that. We'll provide the cluster mailboxes, landscape buffers, dedicate the right-of-way, the half-street improvements in Indiana and Polk, and then full improvements on View. With that, we request approval of the preliminary plat. We'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Womack. I understand from staff that the northernmost lot on the in the northeast corner is also going to provide drainage treatment for the subdivision to the north, the properties north.
Mr. Harrington, that's correct.
And did that require any special modification to your plan, or was it able to accommodate it as laid out?
Mr. Harrington, there originally was a desire for an additional lot because we needed to provide that area in the landscape buffers. That lot was removed. So you just have the 2 on Northview Drive that's buildable. So.
And similar question on, what is, I guess, lot 3 on Indiana there, a rather large lot, is that, also for, drainage treatment,
That is correct.
stormwater treatment? Okay. And I have no further questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. And I'd like to go to the next person signed up, like Ryan. I'm sorry, I better use my glasses on this one.
I don't need to speak.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next is Leslie Blair. Blair, I'd like to address this, please.
Hi, I'm Leslie Blair, and I own 2 properties.
Your address and have you been sworn in,
I
please?
own 2001 Viewview Drive in Caldwell, and I also own 1221 North Indiana, which sits on the corner of
And you were sworn in, please?
Yes, I was.
Thank you very much.
And then my property that I live in on Viewview, it is right next to the field there. And I'm the last house at the dead end where most of the construction is going to be going on right there. And so my question is, I guess, to the developers, is that obviously they're gonna complete the street there and open that up, the field, or obviously to get into to build the housing development. But one of the neighbors was saying that they're going to be putting in sidewalks as well. And I'm not quite sure if there's gonna be sidewalks. When does the construction begin? And is there going to be a fence put up, like a privacy fence on Viewview, so I don't have to see all the other to the other houses? Those are kind of my questions. And I don't know who can answer those. I don't know who to talk to about those questions.
Ms. Blair, that was the sidewalks, yes or no?
Yeah, are there gonna be expanding, we have no sidewalks on our street, and they came in and put sidewalks throughout the whole neighborhood. I don't care if we have a sidewalk or not, I just wanna know if they're going to come in and, like, rip up my new landscaping to make sidewalks.
Okay, I'm not sure about on the street, but the proposal here, the sidewalks are just concerned those, directly, as part of this proposal. We don't typically go off-site with those improvements unless there's some special case.
Okay.
Like a school crossing, for example. But not to say that it wouldn't be looked at in the future.
Okay.
And what we see is, in the proposal is, it's going to be self-contained on that property.
Okay.
And, so what was your second question?
Oh, when does construction start, if this is all approved?
My assumption, it's not stated, but it usually begins immediately after the approval process, and there is a sunset clause on all this, that if they don't perform, it goes away.
Oh.
So, they'll be interested in starting as soon as possible,
Okay.
weather permitting and all that.
Okay, all right. Then I'm good.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your testimony. Next person to sign up is Ray Easterling. I'd like to try to step aside, please.
I said I didn't want to speak, but I do have a couple of questions now. If I
Well,
can
that would
change that.
constitute testimony. Would you approach, please, with the questions?
My name is Ray Easterling. I live at 1920 Viewview Drive, and I'm still a little.
And Ms. Easterling, have you been sworn in, please?
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you, go ahead.
Okay. With the plans, maybe I should understand them, but I don't understand them completely. Is View Drive going to connect with North Indiana and become a through street? Or is the only access going to be from View Drive? I've kind of read through the things, but I'm still confused. I don't have a final answer on what they're proposing there.
May I allow, staff to address that question, please?
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. View Drive will connect to North Indiana Street. It will be a through street through the development and along the existing View Drive.
My next question would be how, they talk about 4 residential plots or what, how many houses are they proposing?
4.
Just 4 houses?
Yes.
Okay, at first it was like quite a few, wasn't it? I mean, from the first,
And ma'am, address the question to me, but I would like staff to please address the number of houses, please.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. So, this development is somewhat twofold, okay? So, the preliminary plat, what's in front of us tonight, is 4 residential lots. That's 4 houses. Prior to that, and as part of this property, there was a land division that created an additional 6 lots to the north of this property that's in front of us tonight. So, all told, there will be 10 homes, 4 on View Drive and 6 additional on the northern Santa Clara Road.
Santa Clara. And Santa Clara will go through to Indiana.
It will also attach to North Indiana.
Also on the irrigation, I pay Canyon Hill irrigation taxes, but I don't have access to irrigation. So I'm wondering if they put in an irrigation system, is that going to possibly give me access that I've never had all these years?
And I'll ask the city engineer to address that, Mr. Hill, please.
I call the irrigation district and they say, well, you have to pay, and I've paid it all these years, but I have no irrigation water, no access to any. I pay city water.
Me either.
So, Mr. Hearing Examiner, the irrigation, that would be, my name is Rob McDonald. I work at 621 Cleveland Boulevard, and I have this one.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
The irrigation, situation that this development would be doing is not obligated to provide irrigation to any other properties outside of their development. I don't know exactly what their system's gonna look like or the feasibility of something like that, but that's not an obligation that they have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. And, Ann, you have any more questions, please?
No, I think that was the main ones that I did have. There is some property next to mine does that property run through? It's actually a poll address, but the back of the property adjoins View Drive. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And there was some question about who owned that property, whether it came with this original plan, or I'm just wondering, because it sits right next to my property, so.
On the west side of the subject property?
It'd be on the east side.
East side.
East side of the property. There's an old garage or barn that's set back there that it has 3 sides standing to it.
And I'd like
There was some
staff.
question I thought about who actually owned the back half of that property when they started this. That question was asked before.
Ms. McDonald, do you have do you know the ownership on that? Or is that
Mr.
part of it?
Yeah, Mr. Hearing Examiner, if I am following correctly, that she's speaking about this parcel right here. Does this look correct?
Well, if it goes from Polk over to View, he's maybe the drive right through there.
According to the county assessor's information, the property is owned by a William Zimmerman.
The property is what?
Owned by William Zimmerman.
Yes, yes, that is his name.
Okay.
So does that property change, does he own all the property, or?
And there's,
From Polk to View,
the application does not involve that property, yeah.
I'm sorry, to,
The application does not involve that property at all.
oh,
It's for the property, to the east of that. But, thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it, and, I think that concludes the number of people who have signed up. I will allow, rebuttal from the applicant, please. Would you care to make the rebuttal?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, Nicolette Womack, Assembly Horn, 110 West Idaho, Suite 210, Boise, Idaho, 83702, and I've been sworn in. We have nothing to rebut, but I appreciate, the time tonight.
Thank you very much. Does staff have, further comments on that?
No, sir, I do not.
Thank you very much. With that, I'll close the hearing and move to the decision phase of this. For case number SUV 21-000040, Woodhaven Subdivision, the hearing examiner concurs with the statements, problems, and policies presented in the staff report, specifically the comprehensive plan analysis that I agree with the staff's assessment of that. And the goals and policies are appropriate. We have, for a preliminary plat, findings and facts, and referring to page 5 of the staff report, section 6. The Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. Section 7, conclusions of law. The Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend to the Caldwell City Council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met. The hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. Section 8, the recommendation. Based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council the case number SUV 21-000040, a preliminary plat for Woodhaven Subdivision consisting of 4 single-family residential lots with an average residential lot size 9,597 square feet in an R1 low-density residential zone on parcel R349-00014, comprised of 1.28 acres plus or minus, is approved with conditions of approval listed in section 10. In section 10, the conditions of approval contain 10.1 through 10.14. the hearing chamber concurs with those conditions of approval. I think they're sufficient, to address the requirements in this, application. And, with that, I will close the hearing and move to the next item on the agenda. And thank all you who testified. I appreciate the testimony. The next item on the agenda is, under section 2, item 3, action item ANN 21-1 and the PUD 21-1. And this is known as the Enclave Subdivision. And with that, I would ask the staff to make the presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner, Debbie Root, 621 Cleveland Boulevard, and I have been sworn. The application before you tonight is for an annexation of 45.62 acres. It's two properties, R327950 and R32795010. The applicant is requesting to annex this property with a mixed-use zoning designation of highway corridor, which is consistent with the comprehensive plan designation for this property, which is also highway corridor. The map on the far right indicates the, kind of light brown coloring, that's highway corridor on the comprehensive plan. And then, the middle map on this slide indicates the, zoning that's already occurred, which is R1 is immediately adjacent to the property, and, across the road to the north, there is some C3 and some R3, or C2 zone property and some R3, and then a mix of high-density residential R3 and R1 zoning to the kind of the northwest. Immediately adjacent to the boundaries of this property on the south, and to the southeast, is Nampa City impact area and or Nampa City limits, depending upon the state annex those properties, but that is Nampa's jurisdiction. The properties immediately to the east and adjacent are actually in the county currently, but they are in the city of Caldwell impact area. And the applicant has been required in this development to make connection to those property, provide access to those properties, and also will be required to step services to those properties to the south, or to the east, the two properties. The second portion of this application is for a planned unit development to develop 301 residential units, including single-family and multifamily. They're also proposing a traditional mini storage facility, 5 retail commercial lots, and then 1 additional restricted RV storage lot. That RV storage lot is located south of the Wilson Drain, but is part of this property, and will not have sewer services available. That would require that the applicant punch a sewer line under the Wilson Drain for 1 single spot on that, that side of the drain. It won't serve additional properties to the south because that is Nampa's jurisdiction, and so staff made the determination along with the applicant that sewer would not be required on that parcel. It was required to annex with this property, and the Celeste Avenue, which is a collector roadway that not only is a collector roadway for the city of Caldwell, but also provides through access to the city of Nampa. City of Nampa requested that that be required as well, for an ongoing connection for them. This applicant is required to complete that roadway through to the south property boundary, across the Wilson Range up to Parcher. That roadway, currently on the preliminary plat that is provided, is not shown with the correct right-of-way width. It's required to be 70 feet, and it's shown on the current preliminary plat as 65 feet. That has been brought to the applicant's attention. It's conditioned in the conditions of approval to provide a new preliminary plat with the correct road detail and the correct dimensional detail on the preliminary plat for that, prior to us scheduling a hearing with the city council. The highway corridor, which is what they requested to be zoned as, does not provide for single-family residential as a outright permitted use in the highway corridor, actually precludes it. And traditional mini storage would require a special use permit. Through the opportunity of a PUD, the applicant can provide for up to a total net property of 30% for both that single-family use and the traditional mini storage. It would not be able to exceed that. With that, the original plan was to have a great deal more single-family residential, which they could not do based on our PUD code. So they modified this plan to provide for multifamily, fourplex, duplex, fourplexes, and sixplex units. These units will not be separate. They'll be, structures. I think there's 22 structures that contain around 90 units at that point that are kind of configured more in a kind of a townhome type situation, but they're not going to be separated. Then they also have a proposed apartment complex with clubhouse, pool amenities and things, and that apartment complex is kind of centrally located in this development with 24-plex buildings and 36-plex buildings, apartment structures. They're also proposing 5 commercial retail lots. Those lots are conditioned to be commercial retail. They cannot be turned into residential lots by condition, which makes this a true mixed-use PUD in compliance with the PUD code and requirements. The 2 of the 5 requirements to even be considered for PUD, in that it is a mixed use and it provides a multi-types of residential houses. As conditioned, the preliminary plat does comply with the requirements of the code. The phasing plan that was provided is different than what was initially proposed and established in the discussions with ITV and city staff. It appears that the phasing plan provides for Celeste Avenue to be the initial roadway that's completed versus the access point at Enclave Avenue. With that, ITV ITD has indicated in a brief email to me this afternoon that all frontage improvements to, provide for safe access and travel will be required, at whichever location they choose to do. So all the frontage improvements may have to be completed at Celeste Avenue if they choose to, continue with the phasing plan and the development process. They have to comply with ITD requirements regardless. They have met the open space requirements for the development. They've met the number of amenities that are required to comply with the PUD requirements. Some of those things include, having, little open space niches between the commercial development, locations. So outdoor seating, gathering spaces, which provides for some open space and some nice amenity there in the commercial lot. They have quite a number of amenities that are specific to, and I've been told will be only for the multifamily units, which is the pool and the clubhouse. And then the other more passive amenities that are proposed to be the community node and the park with the tot lot, bocce, well, maybe the bocce courts are in the multifamily, the pickleball courts, the half basketball court, and then the Wilson Drain pathway will be completed, which is a requirement of the subdivision ordinance, landscaping, and for PUD. They're proposing some passive, development on the seepage bed, storm drainage areas, which are nice amenities as long as it's not wet. So hopefully their seepage beds are appropriate. And, with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Root. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the exhibits presented to me. This, from the applicant, TO Engineers, is their presentation packet, which I have labeled Exhibit ANN 21-1-1. The correspondence that you mentioned with members of ITD with today's date from Erika Bowen, an email here with photograph exhibits. I will label this Exhibit ANN 21-1-2. Another exhibit from the applicant's engineer, Mr. John Carpenter, dated March 19th, in response to ITD's question about the width of Celeste Drive. I will label this Exhibit ANN 21-1-3.
Mr. Henningsen, that was staff, not ITD. The John Carpenter memo is just the staff.
Oh, it's two staff?
Yeah.
In response to ITD's question about.
In response to staff.
Oh, staff, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. And they indicate that they will be able to comply with the 70-foot width on Celeste Drive. Mr. Let's just start with that. Indicated to me in conversation that the original phasing plan was on the east side of the property, and would include the development of Enclave Road. They changed that to the west side of the property. Phase 1 is now on the west side, which will require the installation of Celeste Road, and that's the nature of concern about ITD. So could you go into that a bit, and would you recommend adding or amending conditions of approval to to reflect the ITD's concerns about improvements on the right of way?
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. The engineering staff report reflects the requirements to comply with ITD. ITD's letters are also in the, exhibits attached with this. The phasing plan, they're gonna have to comply with whatever, ITD requires of that particular access at that point. It was just a note from us that, hey, the phasing plan changed, and it appears that they're going to, proposing to utilize the Celeste access prior to, the, Enclave Avenue access. The applicant can address that further. We don't know what that looks like, which roads they were intending to fully complete. Based on that phasing plan, it's not clear. So what it appears is that Celeste Avenue will be completed. That may not be their full plan. So that would be a question for the applicant.
All right, thank you, Ms. Root. And that, going with the development of Celeste Avenue first would be ahead of ITD's planned improvements on Highway 55. Is that true? That they were kind of counting on already being done? Is that the gist of that?
No, it actually would not matter which road they developed. They are likely to be ahead of ITD improving Archer Highway.
Okay, thank you very much. One of the concerns about this, you indicated that this is on the edge of Caldwell City's area of impact, particularly on the eastern boundary, Highway 55. And is there a statement in the comprehensive plan and or ordinance about gateways to the city of Caldwell as might pertain to this development?
In the comprehensive plan, it does address some community development with regards to the gateway street. It's a little unclear as to which streets they talk about or perceive to be gateway streets. We perceive Highway 55 to be a gateway street, as well as 10th Avenue and those. I can't specifically answer you whether or not Highway 55 is identified specifically in that plan. I know 21st Avenue in Caldwell is, and there's a couple others like right downtown. And so, but as we have moved forward with applications, whether it's beyond 10th Avenue, Highway 2026, in those areas, the staff and the hearing bodies have considered those gateway corridors, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Fruit. Are there any specifics in the plan for gateway treatments of areas such like this, in general, and not particularly specific to Highway 55?
I would have to review that language again and identify, we have specific landscaping that's identified for Highway 55 and for 2026 to keep those corridors open and make them look nice. But I can't speak to currently what additional language is in the comprehensive plan with regards to Gateway Street.
Thank you, Ms. Root. That clarifies it. My concern here is that, assuming this is regarded as a gateway to the city of Caldwell, and it certainly is, probably more traffic goes by this site than any other presumed gateway, we would be confronted with this mini storage use as the first thing that you'd encounter, in entering into the city of Caldwell. It's my hope that we could get something a little more, a little creative, a little more of a statement, the kind of community that we have here. Okay, we covered the ITD, indicated to me there could be an issue with, I don't have the phasing map, but this side drainage area in sort of the southwest corner, is designed to be, built in a later phase, but the earlier phases depend on that for their stormwater, treatment. Is that correct?
I don't know that they depend on that for their stormwater treatment. My concern with you was that, a PUD is intended to provide, the 10% qualifying open space for the use and enjoyment of the residents within the development. And so my concern was that that whole community node with all of those amenities that are provided or proposed in the PUD, to be provided for the use and enjoyment of the residents within the community, as they have the phase plan laid out, with the single-family residential being in the first phase, and then the multifamily, the lower density multifamily, of the 2 to 6 plexes in the second phase. There is open space around each of these residential units, which is a nice benefit. The Wilson Drain pathway will be completed with that phase. They do have a small park that will have a tot lot, and when I say small park, it's actually almost an acre of property, that contains the, guest parking or overflow parking, as well as, 2 pickleball courts. It's unclear whether the half basketball court is shared with pickleball court, because then that's not really additional amenities, that's, and then a tot lot. So there is some open space provided for the approximate 90 units of lower density multifamily. But until that community node is completed, there's quite a bunch of amenities and open space that is not provided for, the use and enjoyment of those individuals. And that was my comment with regards to the seepage bed.
Thank you, Ms. Rude. I stand corrected on that. But the question does arise as to providing those amenities with phases 1 and 2. Are you suggesting that we alter the phasing on that to provide such amenities, or just wait till phase 3?
Again, I think it's kind of back to this, timing, and that there are amenities provided for, the phase 2, the multiplex. So is it adequate? Is it sufficient? And then it's unclear as to when those additional amenities, the community node, would be provided. Is it at the end or completion of all of those other multifamily units, which could be several years beyond when the 2 to 6 plexes are built? Maybe they're all going to be built at the same time. We don't know. But it's just an observation from a phasing plan.
Thank you very much. I also had a concern about a very brief phasing plan, and I'll address this to the applicant, but I'm interested in having more detail for that phasing plan. The commercial lots in phase 5 are basically open-ended, but they provided, look like, pads or footprints in a street and parking layout for that. Is there any indication, of what kind of, commercial they're looking for? Are there any, constraints except to those listed under the zone for those commercial uses?
Those listed under the zone would be, you know, the constraints to that somewhat. They are proposed as, flex commercial retail buildings. One of the buildings is proposed with a, you know, a drive-through type of setup. Other than being conditioned that it must be commercial retail, I did not put any further conditions on what type of, businesses that would be. I mean, we always have a hope of what would provide services, you know, to that community there, but, I did not place any specific, it must have 2 coffee shops and a bank there or something, that isn't realistic to establish those businesses there.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth. My question then would be, has there been consideration, as far as excluding particular uses in the C zone? For limiting the types of uses?
I did not review the HC code for that purpose, probably should have, to exclude those, but I did not at this point do that.
Ms. Ruth, do you think there'd be a value in, that exercise of maybe checking some off the list? You've had that kind of discussion with the applicant?
I've not had that discussion with the applicant, and there probably is value to it, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Ruth, that concludes my questions. I'd like to ask the applicant to make a presentation, please.
Good evening, I'm Alec Agarola, 332 North Broadmoor Way, Nampa, Idaho, and I've been sworn in.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah,
You have a slide presentation? Okay, let's see that, please.
That's okay.
And let me just ask you before we get started, have you seen these exhibits that I edited in the record? Do you have copies of those?
I believe one item we did not have a copy of, the ITD comment.
Okay.
That was received today. We have not received that for review yet.
Okay, go ahead, please, with your presentation.
Okay. So I'm Alec Agarola. I'm a land use planner with TO Engineers. I'm representing the developer and owner of Enclave Subdivision. I'll be also joined tonight in my presentation by Jamie Snyder. She's our landscape architect with TO Engineers. So she'll be tackling the landscaping and amenities, where I'll focus more on the land use side of things. I'd first like to thank you for your time tonight, for our space of having this hearing, and also like to thank Deb and staff for all their efforts and coordination of getting us to hearing tonight. So with that, I do kindly request approval for our annexation, PUD, and preliminary plat for Enclave Subdivision. So looking here, this is our vicinity map, just quickly place making where we're at in Caldwell. So we're just southwest of Midway Road and Carter Road. As you can see here, there's several approved existing or approved and to be built subdivisions around us, mixes of low, medium density, residential, commercial, and those county parcels. And with this, next slide shows existing zoning. As you see again, between Nampa and Caldwell, there's an array of low, medium, high density residential, commercial, all Caldwell commercial, Kane County commercial, and Nampa commercial. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag of zoning here, with those ag uses as it's transitioning from ag to more urban setting. And then, this is the future land use map. As you can see, our site is, highway corridor in the future land use. I don't know if you can see that black dotted line kind of going through the site. That's the division between Caldwell and Nampa. So everything south and east is pretty much Nampa, except those two properties directly adjacent to the east. But as you see again, it's a mix of low, medium, and high density residential, some community mixed use and commercial, for future land uses for both the city of Caldwell and Nampa. And so, going over some of the planned unit development, requirements, we are asking for, HC zoning with a PUD. Land uses on site are gonna be the single family residential RV parking, 2 to 6 plex units, those apartments, indoor self-storage and the retail commercial. We must meet 2 of the 5 requirements. We meet, item 1, offers a maximum choice of living environments by allowing a variety of housing and building types. And it also promotes mixed-use projects which are functionally integrated within the development and provide services to the primary use. Also, we do meet density requirements of site for highway corridor zoning. We are at 6.6 units per acre for the gross density, and the comprehensive plan dictates that the gross density is to be 6 to 40 units per acre in HC zoning. And we believe this density kind of allows us to be a little more of a friendly neighbor to the surrounding land uses, especially to the west and north, where there's some uses still and low, medium density residential. And then we must provide those 4 more amenities, and Jamie will highlight those more. So this is our phasing plan, kind of zoomed up. We can provide a better representation of this phasing plan, mixing with our site plan I'll show to you next. But our phasing is to include single family and RV parking in phase 1, the 2 to 6 plex units for phase 2, multifamily phase 3, and then 4 and 5 will be, 4 will be the indoor self-storage, and 5 will be the retail commercial. So after phase 1 and 2 are complete, that's when Celeste and Enclave will be built out, the main 2 access points to our site. And then looking at our site plan here, nice color rendering of our site. We are proposing 59 lots on the 45.6 acres. 19 of those are those single family on the western side of the project for phase 1 for the RV parking. And then we'll have 6 commercial lots, 5 lots fronting along Karcher between Enclave and Celeste Avenue, and then indoor self-storage as a commercial lot. And then we'll have 10 common lots with that. And then we are looking at for 1 apartment, the complex, we're looking at 1 lot for those for the apartment complexes there. And then we're looking at 22 lots for the 2 to 6 plex units on the site. With phase 1 of the project, again, we're building those 19 single-family homes. The intent of that is we initially have much more single-family residential on the site, but as Deb noted, it wasn't in compliance to HC zoning, even with the PUD. So we reduced that number, but we thought it was important to keep that element, to create a buffer for the existing R1 low-density zoning directly to the east of us for Canyon Estate as it transitions from their site onto our higher density uses as you get further east on site. And then phase 2 are going to be 90 units of those 2 to 6 plex units. And so they wrap around the southern portion of the site here and go up in here. So there's going to be 90 of those to be included. And with those, our intent there was to have a natural blend with the proposed Middlebury North subdivision and Nampa. Those were to be townhomes in that development directly south and east of us, so it kind of blends with that use to the south of us. And also there's a central parking area for guest parking for these 2 to 6 plex units on the site located in block 5 for additional guest parking next to this open space with some amenities that, again, Jamie will highlight. And also, I should show you here, these lots, fourplex units, will take access off a common drive. And as conditioned in the staff report, the unit closest to the public roadway will orient its front door to the public right-of-way, whereas the driveway and garage will be accessed from the shared common drive. And Jamie will show you some renderings of what those are to look like, those 2 to 6plex units, and kind of place what that's going to look like. And then for the apartment complexes, we're proposing 2 24-plex apartments and 4 36-plex apartments. These will be centrally located on site, be kind of the core of the development. Our intent here is to use the buffering from the surrounding uses of us to buffer from the exterior boundaries, and then using the single-family commercial from Karcher and storage, and the 2 to 6plex units to transition from lower density, medium density to higher density in the central part of our development. That was the intent of that. And then we provide an internal parking circulator for those units, or the apartment complexes, with additional guest parking as needed. And then as for the commercial fronting Karcher, those be an array of commercial retail uses. Those are to be flexible and kind of up to whoever the tenant is to decide what space that's going to be. So we're looking at banks, coffee shop, the drive-through of some sort, et cetera. But we are open to communicating to Deb and with staff about the potential restrictions that may be needed on the site for retail commercial. We believe that's a valuable conversation as well to have, just to, as you mentioned, the gateway corridor and making sure it's a nice looking product for the city of Caldwell. So I think we can keep having that conversation, see where it goes from there. And then lastly, I'd like to quickly go over connectivity with roadways on site. As Deb noted, we brought Enclave through Celeste Avenue, a collector. We will bring that up to standard with a 70-foot right-of-way, to create greater community connectivity, as it is a collector, be a major thoroughfare for this neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods. We did tie to the stub from Canyon View West, Blackstone Drive, from here, and brought it all the way to the eastern boundary to stub over here. And we have also stubbed Colony Street to the east as well for future connectivity purposes. And then our main accesses are Enclave and Celeste. And per ITD, our initial site plan wasn't in conformance to ITD's design for the widening of Karcher Road. This has been reviewed, and we have accommodated for 120 feet of right-of-way on the frontage of Karcher, as the center line of that road is going to be shifted south. So the current center line is 120 feet onto our site, and it will be shifted down to accommodate that widening project. Additional landscape buffering on that as well for the frontage. That concludes my portion of the presentation. I will gladly hand it off to Jamie, and if it's more efficient, I can answer questions after she's finished with her portion of the presentation. Whoever's best fitted for you. Thank you.
Thank you. If you have the wrong list here, I would like to I'd like to let you finish your presentation with the other members of your team, and then I do have quite a number of questions, and I'm not sure exactly whom on your team might be able to answer those. But I will call you back for that questioning. So thank you very much for your testimony. We'll go to Colin Runhar.
Jeannie will go first, if that's okay with you.
Yes, please. And then. Have you signed up? Oh, yeah, okay.
Good evening,
Great,
Mayor,
you're here,
Mr.
thank you.
Green Examiner. My name's Jamie Snyder. My work address is 332 North Broadmoor Way in Nampa, Idaho, 83687. Landscape architect for TO Engineers, and yes, I've been sworn in tonight.
Thank you very much. Close to the mic, please.
Thank you. Sorry if I can figure out how to switch the slide. There we go. As Alec kind of precluded to, I'm the landscape architect for this project. I'm here to talk about the amenity package and the landscape design for the overall application. Just right off the bat, I just want to say the design team and the developer has worked extremely hard to make this a walkable, connected community with ample green space, with walkable, detached sidewalks, micro pathways, macro pathways that provide connection to not only different points around our development, but also to our neighbors to the east, west, south, and north. Highlights of this landscape package I would just like to talk about first include, once again, our ample green space and open space that are in excess of the requirement. We're also providing, in addition to Caldwell's irrigation drain pathway system along the Wilson Drain, our single-family homes and fourplex units open to green space in the rear or landscape buffers. We have highly planted street buffers along detached sidewalks. And we also have two separate and complete amenity packages for both the apartment phase and the single-family and multiplex, or 4 to 6plex units on the southern boundary. Just real quick, I'll go through the existing conditions. So there is a home site in the northeast corner that will be removed. So we will be mitigating for those trees that are removed. In total, we're removing 52 trees, and mitigation for those trees is to be planned fully on this site. We will be planting above code minimum quantities within the open space for the apartments, open space areas around the multiplexes, our interior park system, and we'll also be planting 1 tree at the rear and 1 tree on the street side of each single family home. This is an exhibit of our open space provided within the development. The PUD requires 10% of the gross area to be qualifying open space. That would be 4.56 acres for our development. We provided 5.13 usable qualifying acres of open space. And as we get into the presentation a little bit more, we can talk about how we've tried to utilize the non-qualifying spaces of our storm retention ponds as community gathering spaces above and beyond. We'll talk about phase 1, the single-family homes. As I mentioned earlier, or just a minute ago, the residential lots, we worked to create these so they backed up to open space or a landscape buffer, so we didn't have backyards facing backyards. There's a complete detached sidewalk route along Celeste heading north to our commercial area. There's also connections to through a pathway or a sidewalk system to our amenity package that will occur in phase 2. And there's also a 5-foot micro pathway connection on the north cul-de-sac area that will connect to the Wilson Drain. Phase 1 landscape buffers. We've included a 30-foot landscape buffer along Karcher. That's the required width for the highway corridor of the beautification corridor, I think, of Highway 55. That's the required width, and it also requires enlarged sidewalk of 10 feet, and it also requires the 11 feet plant material on either side, which we have planned for. Celeste Avenue includes the 15-foot landscape buffer for a collector And we're also providing a detached sidewalk, which is beyond the necessary attached sidewalk, all the way down to Flagstone Street. This is just a brief look of how we intend to use that stormwater retention area in phase one as a community amenity and make it visually appealing as this is one of the major entrances to our development. So yes, this will be a free drain material because it is for storm retention, but it's our intention to make this a natural playscape area, able to be flooded if necessary. When it's dry, we intend to use, hopefully, the trees that will be taken down in the northeast corner, cut up into rounds and logs, and utilized in the storm retention area, for a children's play area. These are conceptual renderings for the single-family homes proposed in phase one. There'll be a mix of two-story and one-story product. Again, these will be along tree-lined streets because this was one of our mitigation areas. So each home will have a tree in the front yard. And then these are all proposed with an attached garage and private drive. This addresses the RV parking that occurs south of the Wilson Drain on that triangular piece. This is the privacy wall that we are proposing to put along the frontage of that parcel so that RV parking won't be viewed from the right-of-way. And in front of this wall, there will also be a 15-foot planted landscape buffer as we will be taking our PI line across the drain with the sidewalk and road. We'll move on to phase two, highlighted here in purple. This is the 2 through 4 and 6-plex units. These also have a complete off-road walkable access to our amenity area, sidewalks along Flagstone, and also a direct access through a major pathway to the Wilson Drain is another highlight. Along Enclave Avenue, we have an oversized parking lot screening on the west side to further screen the parking for the apartment complexes there. We have a detached sidewalk all the way from Karcher to the intersection of the open space and storm retention pond. And I mentioned the major pathway connection directly to the Wilson Greenway. This is a visual image of phase two street buffers. So again, we'll have the required 30-foot landscape buffer along Karcher, the widened sidewalk that's required there, and then the 11-foot plant material on either side. Along Enclave Way, we have the 15-foot landscape buffer, a detached sidewalk, all the way to the point where the storm retention pond kind of comes in at that bend towards the south. And then again, we have an oversized parking lot landscape buffer to screen the parked cars for the apartment complex. These are some visuals of the amenities that are going to take place that are proposed for the park within phase two. We have 2 pickleball courts and a half basketball court located in the upper right-hand corner. You can see that pad there. There's also a tot lot located here and open green space lawn play area within this park. There's also, well, I'll get to it in a second. There's also a couple more amenities that fitness stations also occur in phase two. Here's some renderings of the phase two 2 to 6-plex units that we are proposing. You'll see that this proposed design actually lives like a single-family home, complete with a 2-car garage and a 2-car driveway for each. And as Alec mentioned before in his presentation, the units along Flagstone, the front door is proposed to be flipped, so that unit, the front unit faces the right-of-way there. This is phase three. The apartments This development occurs at the heart of our proposed subdivision. Highlights of this community include ample open space, an independent amenity package from the surrounding residential units. It's also been located in close proximity to our commercial center, has micro pathways throughout for pedestrian circulation to each building, and the amenity package, and it also has direct pathway connection to the Wilson Drain, through the major pathway, located within Phase 2. This is an overview of the amenities that are offered in Phase 3. We have a tot lot, pool and clubhouse, 50 by 100 open play lawn area, picnic shelter with barbecues, a bocce court, and a fenced dog area. This is an idea of what we're proposing for the stormwater retention in Phase 3. This large community node, again, sits at a prominent location within our subdivision. And so the design team and developer worked hard to make sure this was a bonus to the community and not just something that could sit idle on this corner. And so again, we're proposing a natural play area with a free drain material that can be flooded. And when it's dry, you'll see that there's maybe log rounds and stumps to play on. This is also a location of the last amenity piece. This is the fitness stations. You've seen there the half moon along Enclave Way. You would sit on a pad that would be able to be flooded if necessary, and if not, would be completely useful. This is just an architectural rendering of the proposed apartments. They have staggered natural setbacks within the architecture, max building height of 41 feet 3 inches. These front doors are oriented on the internal park loop. They also each have private open space in the form of a patio or a balcony with architectural fencing. They have views into open space, and they're constructed of low maintenance materials on the exterior, such as stone veneer, cladding, stucco, and wood planking. The color tone is proposed to be a natural earth palette, as seen here. This is a conceptual rendering of the pool house that's centrally located within the apartment amenity complex. It's proposed to have restrooms, showers, and changing facilities. Again, the building materials will complement the earth tones of the apartment complexes. Phase 4 is the storage unit, highlighted here in red. Access to these storage units will be provided only through Enclave Way and Sanctuary Street, and any parking that would need to occur would be inside, not on the street. For buffers around this, the 15-foot minimum buffer between Phase 4, which is the storage unit, and the 4 to 6 plex units to the south for a differing of land use buffer. We also have that same 15-foot landscape buffer running along the east side. That includes a mix of evergreen and deciduous trees to screen the land use adjacent to our east. We also have a highly planted landscape buffer along Karcher, which is the 30-foot landscape buffer that we've talked about previously. And we're also proposing an architectural wall in front of storage units themselves, so it appears more as a building or a development, not so much as what you would think of as a typical storage unit development, which we'll look at in the next phase, or next slide, and here it is. This is the storage unit architecture. You'll see on the bottom there that we're proposing to have a human scale 12-foot privacy wall that provides screening along Karcher. And so you can see the concept here is to provide a different materials and the aesthetic that, again, it's not the typical storage unit exterior. Inside the storage unit facility itself as a single-story office building, with a gable-style roof accent. Last and final phase, so phase 5 is our commercial. As Alex mentioned, it's a multi-tenant space, of 5 pads. It is located conveniently along Karcher to provide walkable and convenient goods and services for not only the residents of the Enclave community, but also our surrounding neighbors. Again, we have the 30-foot buffer along Karcher. As you'll see on the bottom, the detached sidewalk, the detached oversized sidewalk at 10 feet, and then planting material 11 feet on either side as required by code. And you can see on the bottom there that we've spaced these pads significantly apart from each other, so we can add outdoor eatery or other gathering spaces for each of these units, and create connections between services and Karcher if needed. The upper right-hand corner is just kind of showed a graphic representation of what these outdoor eatery and open spaces could feel like. And this final slide for phase 5 is just to give the feel, the amenity package we would like to, that we envision on phase 5, outdoor seating, open plaza areas for programming such as art shows, music, and art. This is a conceptual architectural rendering of the commercial building style for the buildings along Karcher. They'd be single-story, max height of 21. Again, the open space we'd like to see separating the buildings for our plazas. Low canopies indicate the enhanced pedestrian entrances at each tenant, and then use of durable materials. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. I'll save my questions for later. Next we have, Colin, Rundar, help me out there.
Colin Ronhar,
Thank you very much.
Bridger 2, North Broadmoor Way, Camp Idaho, what happened this morning.
Thank you.
I'm really just here to answer any engineering questions you have. I did want to clarify that phasing question you did have for staff earlier. That community node there is shown in phase 3. From an engineering perspective, it most likely will be included in phase 2. That I think it's valuable, like you said, to have that conversation again for phasing. It's not dead set phase 3, because it would be needed for phase 2 storm drainage, like you precluded to. With that, if it was built in phase 2, those amenities would also be built in phase 2. So that phasing, that community node that was noted by Jamie earlier, would most likely have to be built and maintained in phase 2, with the 4 to 6 bucks.
I think you would like to, one of the things I was concerned about is a more detailed phasing plan, and it's something that I would ask for, and so keep that in mind. Certainly, this is like a fairness issue as far as providing amenities to those who have already occupied. But thank you very much, and I have no further questions at the moment. Next, I have Grant.
I don't wish to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. Like the next, there are no persons signed up for neutral testimony under opposition. Dane Riggs, Mr. Riggs, please.
I think Diane Regan.
Oh, Diane, I'm sorry. I'm terrible with names, but would you please testify if you'd like?
My name is Diane Regan. I live at 12402 Karcher Road. And I have been sworn in, Nampa, Idaho, 83651.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Sir, I live directly across the road on Karcher, and the subdivision looks directly into my place. My house is 100 years old. The traffic on Highway 55 is bumper-to-bumper traffic from 7 o'clock in the morning until about 10, and from about 3 until about 7 at night. There are constant accidents on the road. I understand that ITD will be widening the road. I have been told they're gonna be on my doorstep. However, this particular subdivision, as I see it now, has really only one exit or entrance, which is onto Karcher. And I've been told by Celeste does not exist on the south side of the road yet, so that would have to be built. There are, between Lake and Midway, there are no other exits. There is a subdivision that is on the east side of this particular proposed division, that has just recently been built. And it has already caused accidents. However, it has at least two entrance and exits, one onto Karcher, but then also onto Midway. Where this particular property is set up, unless they have purchased the land below their subdivision, there are no exits to either Midway or to Lake. The other question I had was, currently, to my understanding, there is no sewage system or water system from either Caldwell or Nampa. And my question is, how are they going to be handling those items? Is that going to be brought from where it is now to this particular location? If not, if they're planning to do wells, we have a problem with groundwater. Those have been some of my primary concerns. I think one of the biggest concern though is the high density that they're wanting to put in with this 45 acres, which it looks lovely, but it's not gonna look so lovely when when those people are trying to get out to do their activities. And as far as being able to use a commercial coming into that area, that could be, I mean, it would be nice, but, you're not gonna have any drive-ins. I don't see any way that there could be a drive-in. I may not be looking, far enough in advance, but that's my biggest concern, is just when the subdivision on the corner went in, there has already been 3 or 4 people that have been killed. And even though they widened the road at that point, and they will be widening it even more, the traffic is still gonna be there. And with the number of people that are going to be just in this area, this 45 acres, to try to get out onto the roads, I do see a serious problem with that. And I think that pretty much covers my concerns. It looks nice, and it looks great, but the impact is gonna be huge in this particular area. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. What I'd like to do now is ask the applicant to come up for rebuttal, and we'll have a discussion about some of these points that have been brought up in the testimony. And I'd like to get your statements on that. One thing that we have not talked about, which is really preeminent, is the impacts on the school system. And there's a letter from the Valley View School District expressing rather quite dire concerns about the explosive growth of the impact on Valley View School District in all school districts for that matter, in the state of Idaho. Question is, have you had that discussion with the school district? And what would that look like?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, we have not had a discussion yet with the school district. We would be happy to further, discuss, any mitigation that we could possibly offer down the road. I know with that letter, big emphasis was on the only way to get schools is through bonds, and, it's unfortunate that bond failed, and that's the only means of them getting additional schools. We would be, again, happy to discuss further with them. We don't know what the answer is right now, but we are happy to accommodate them as best as we can through that process. The only other option we can think of is, I mean, it's not a guaranteed idea, but, X amount of the student possibly could go to, private school. And I know that's not amenable to all residents on the site, but that could alleviate maybe some of those needs. There's just some options we were thinking and playing around with, because it is pretty close to Neighbor Christian, which is just on Midway, right, half a mile or less from the site. But again, we would be happy to facilitate more conversations, because that is a huge concern, and that's impacting developments like ours and across the valley and the state. We'll do the best we can.
I think it is, just musing here, but there would be a wonderful opportunity on that northeast corner to locate a school there, private school. Just a thought. The phasing, there have been a number of discussions here about the phasing. My feeling is that it is a little bit pliable at this time and not detailed. I would like to see more detailed phasing before this goes to council and the mayor, and particularly some idea of timing. There's no time frame here. There's physical phasing. Again, we talked about taking some of phase 3 and phase 2 perhaps for those amenities. Some other issues that aren't terribly clear. And something, a design of this scope should have a fairly detailed and coherent phasing plan. Would you agree with that?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, we do agree with that. Just sitting here in the presentation, just getting your set of eyes and walking through kind of that, we see those flaws, and we're happy to coordinate with staff a little further for City Council to kind of work out those phasing plans and get a little more concrete idea for comfort for us and for the city as well, to make sure our phasing is at the best of needs for all involved. So, yeah, we're happy to comply with that.
Okay, and I had a question about, well, we discussed the commercial uses available in the HC zone, and I haven't even really addressed that issue. Just a thought I had that perhaps there might be uses allowed in the HC zone, in the commercial aspects of it, that may not be desirable, both to your design, your overall concept, and what the city may want to see on that kind of frontage. So I'd just like you to contemplate that. I do have a list here. We might have that further discussion with staff. The next topic, I'd just inform you this, will be a bridge across the Wilson Drain at Flagstone going to the west. What's the disposition of that?
Mr. Henningsen, are you asking if we're constructing the bridge, or?
Yeah, are you going to connect to that stub?
Yeah, that's our
to the
intent,
west?
to connect to that stub, and I believe we are constructing that bridge, and I think we're connecting to some utilities right there as well to bring onto our site.
Okay, and that sort of leads into the traffic impact. I don't see a traffic impact study in the application, you have one under works, or is that?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, we have submitted a traffic impact study from, a while ago. And that has been included with staff, and staff has reviewed the traffic impact study, and that's been, reviewed by ITD as well.
Okay.
So that, we've complied with that.
And,
that also dictated our access, to Archer.
and, we had testimony, well, quite a bit, and we all have questions about the traffic impacts of this. Talking about the different points of ingress, egress going to the west on, Flagstone, I believe, to that existing road is, what kind of traffic, does your study show that would utilize that for ingress, egress? Do you have some, idea on that? Is that a significant percentage?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I don't know the exact details from the traffic impact study for that section. I know the intersections that were mostly studied in the traffic impact study were, I believe the furthest west, it went with Lake, and it worked down into Enclave and the existing intersection Enclave and Karcher, and, Midway and Karcher, and Middleton and Karcher. That was the requested intersections that we were asked to study for our traffic impact study. And I'm sure in the report, it does mention something about, ingress, egress through, Flagstone and out towards Lake Avenue, because there's a path taking you westbound through Canyon View Estates and I believe Peregrine Estates to, Lake Avenue. But, otherwise, I don't have details specifically on that.
Okay, thank you. I believe, Ms. Root had a comment on that. Would you care to address that, please?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that what you're seeing there is an access out to Karcher from Flagstone through Canyon View. It has been closed, so the actual ingress egress is actually through those developments and not directly to Karcher. It does go out to Lake. So that access that you're seeing in that picture,
Yeah.
that currently exists, that was an access for that Canyon View Estates, and ITD has closed that access due to safety concerns, so it's no longer available. But the connection across the drainage will have to be completed, yes.
And Mr. Warren, on topic, the subdivision from the south, has been proposed, but I understand it's not been adopted or approved in Nampa.
That is also my understanding, is that Middlebury subdivision that's proposed to the south of this development has not yet been fully approved by Nampa.
Okay, thank you. So that, still leaves us back at the ingress that's west and Enclave, and being limited to that. Okay, Alec, let's see, I did appreciate the elevations shown. It looks like the overall design scheme is one of trying to provide reasonable architecture and attractive architecture. And my question is, would this, or are you planning on being the developer, or is that going to be subbed out?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I'm not sure the intention of, the applicant we're working with, if they are to develop or not.
And,
yeah, it just depends.
what I'm going with that is we do have these exhibits, of the renderings and elevations in, your application submittal, and are those, carved in granite, so to speak, or they provide a template, or how committed are you to those drawings as far as the final product is concerned?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I think, they're not set in stone. They're moldable. They're just a good idea of what our intent is to provide a nice, community and with those nice elevations, but they are multiple.
The, question arises is, you know, they seem, well-designed and, you know, we'd like to see something of that nature, particularly in a development this size. And, you know, I was impressed with the kind of, blocking and color schemes and elevations that are presented. I'm thinking in terms of, trying to address those as more or less carved in stone or something of that nature. In other words, I'd hate to see something lesser come in if this development is turned over to another developer and, we end up with something not as attractive. That may be my concern here, and certainly the purview of pioneer development to try to, develop a design theme and stick that design theme, through completion of the project. The same with the commercial, you know, I know it's a kind of a block design elevation, you know, it's conceptual, but I still like the look of that. I tend to, particularly in a PUD circumstance, look to solidify those design criteria, codify them in some way that we know exactly as a city and community what the outcome of that will be. Again, you know, trying to keep the standards high. I know there's been a lot of work from your team on this, and I would consider ensconcing this application and those renderings as part of the requirement for development. Give me a little help there. What would be your suggestions as to achieving that aim? I mean,
Chairman Examiner, I think to uphold design standards that we kind of placed on this project, which I'm happy that you are pleased by what we presented to you. I don't know if staff can put a condition on type of design element and elevations on the project, or something similar to design review, possibly, just to ensure that the site will be up to those standards. Those are the best thoughts I can think of for that, because we do want to ensure that it's a good project for the city and it'll stay that way. Yeah, that's the answer I have.
Thank you. I think I would like to address that. Again, this might be for the staff, but the question was presented by the testifiers about will you have municipal sewer and water systems, and will you be extending that, or is it extent along the boundary of the project?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, we will be planning to municipal sewer and water from adjacent, I believe from Canyon View Estates to the west, and it'll be brought to the site and stubbed to the properties to the east, those county properties. There's two of them directly adjacent to the east. And that's the extent of Caldwell's city boundaries, so that's the extent of bringing those utilities to and through Stubby.
Thank you very much. With that, if you wouldn't mind, just holding fire here, I'd like to direct some of these questions to staff and Ms. Reed, we've discussed not only this hearing, but virtually all the hearings of developments of this type about the impacts on the schools. This is a primary concern of the entire community. I don't have to belabor that point, but could you relate to me the discussions you've had with the school districts and the discussion in the letter we had in the application from the school district? Is that you?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Valley View School District has become more involved in, providing feedback to staff regarding these applications that are coming through. They are in a critical stage of overcapacity for their schools. The recent bonds that did not pass were, quite a blow to them, as, especially the elementary schools that are, in this area of the, city and the county, as Valley View School District not only serves, the city of Caldwell, but they serve the rural Canyon County and the city of Nampa in their district. And so what has occurred with this is that, staff pulled together a meeting with the, Valley View School District. A city council member also attended that, meeting with us. We're beginning those conversations is to put together a master plan, or to help Valley View, help us understand where it is that they, not only that they're over those capacities and that, but where they need to obtain property, what other solutions there are to help to, alleviate some of this capacity. The school district that this development is going to, or the, not the school district, the elementary school that this development will feed into, which, lies to the south and east, or south and west of this, is already over capacity. They have multiple modular units which are also full, which is expressed in those letters. And, so as staff and as hearing bodies and as developers, it is something that has to be addressed. I do know that that was one of the, major concerns the city of Nampa had with the proposed development to the south as well. It's not an easy solution. There's just not an easy solution. We can't necessarily just completely stop development, because what's causing those schools to be over capacity is development that's already approved and is being built. And those developments were, many of them approved years ago, and then now they're being built out. And that has, you know, this explosive growth of the valley has just caused, Valley View, put them into a critical mass where, we just are over capacity at all of the schools except for West Canyon, which is quite a long way. It's actually in Greenleaf area of city impact, but, there's a long ways out there in rural Canyon County. This development, as indicated by the school district letter, will, the middle school kids will have to be bused to Summit View, which is, on the north side of Highway 2026 and Meade Parkway. So, which is, and I kind of, measured that out, so it's about 6 miles versus if they were to go to, Valley View Middle School on 10th Avenue would be about 3 miles. But the capacity is at Summit View, which is a brand new junior high school for Valley View, or middle school for Valley View. But, so this capacity issue with the schools, it's a huge concern. Valley View services so much of our city and all of the rural, Canyon County, as well as portions of Nampa, which is also developing in its immediate vicinity. So I don't know what the answer is. The city is actively working with and helping to provide Valley View, resources, pointed them to Compass. We've reached out to Compass to have some maps and some, balloon circles made, have them, provide us with better information. As these applications come in, that we're able to push back to the developer and say, school district needs this, or the fire district needs that. And, as we develop, this is one of the major concerns that was brought up by Valley View School District is that property has gotten so expensive and it's been gobbled up by developers such as, Corey Barton and Hubble Homes, that Valley View has no place to purchase property, even if they could, and then if the bonds aren't passing, then they can't build those schools either. And so, we're contemplating a lot of different options, and that's, the development community is going to have to contribute to that, or these applications are going to start to be denied. Because we cannot, in the foreseeable future, not start, to, fix this issue with the school. And the burden can't fall solely on all of us taxpayers that live in these districts.
Thank you, Ms. Root. I'm encouraged to hear that the city council and mayor, are having these kind of discussions with the school district, and that's really, I believe, the level that it has to occur. But the last line of the letter, from Valley View School District, from Ms. Boyd talks about, this request is approved, we encourage the development of sidewalks and street lighting to allow for safe walking to school or the bus stop. Has this been addressed, in the context of this, condition of approval?
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. So part of the, standards for subdivision development and in the engineering requirements, they're required to build sidewalks and put in street lighting. And so those things, are being addressed. There are sidewalks and development, the pathways also are part of that whole, plan. This particular pathway along Wilson Drain doesn't necessarily provide for safe walking path to that, school, that elementary school, but there are sidewalks through the development, there's micro pathways through the adjacent development and through Peregrine. The, Peregrine development did actually provide for a school site, and that's the elementary school that is there. So, I believe that our city development standards provide for, the sidewalks and the, street lighting to help, with the issue of safe walk.
May I also add to that?
Yes, please. I was just going to ask you, have you made any accommodations for bus stops within the development?
Yeah, Mr. Hearing Examiner, that was what I was going to follow up with. Our landscape plans actually depict staging locations for bus stops. There's no approval from the Valley View School District at this time about those locations, but we're happy to pass that along to the school district and ensure they're good locations for school pickup, school bus stop pickup locations. But we have, in our landscape plans, they are marked out, those locations. Has been thought through.
Thank you very much. I'm tremendously concerned about this, coming from a family of educators, and I understand the school system is doing everything they can, but I believe that, this is a community-wide issue, and it requires a community-wide solution, a set of solutions. While I have you here, I'd like to get into a little bit of detail concerning the potential commercial uses. I have here the copy of the HC zone that I downloaded from the code. And I haven't gone over this, but, you know, with any, intent or purpose, but, I think it would be fitting, for example, there are some uses here, like repair services, that are permitted, some others that might not be quite fitting in your subdivision. Would you be amenable to, paring down this list in the HC zone of the potential land uses that would not fit in this, proposal, working with staff on that?
Mr. Hangzinger, yes, we're happy to, be amenable to paring down that list, like repair shops. That's not in our vision to include, so we would be happy to ensure, uses such like that, are not included in our site and make sure it's compatible with our community and our vision, so we are amenable.
All right, thank you, and Ms. Root, the same question really, would you, be adverse to working with the applicant to pare down the allowed uses in context of the development agreement?
If I have, yeah, no, actually, Alec and that team have been really great to work with, as well as Brady. And I do believe that although it was an oversight on my part to not have that done already, that it should be done, and that I do feel confident that we, can work together to make that happen before, going before city council.
Thank you, Ms. Root. Make a note here, please. Which brings me to the question of the mini storage. The problem that I see with that is having to do with the gateway issue. This is the entry into Caldwell City on perhaps the busiest, at least two-lane highway. Enormous amount of traffic passes this site every day. And it's just a personal predilection, but I would like to see a gateway to the city being something that is representative of the city and the growth and the beauty and the intelligent planning, let's say, and design. I don't think the mini storage use addresses those kind of statements. And I don't really have a good idea of where to go with that. I've contemplated different solutions. For example, just switching out one of the components, just trading blocks, if you would, putting something more conducive to, the kind of lifestyle that we enjoy in the city of Caldwell. I'm not per se against this type of use, and I think it may have some necessity, particularly in the context of a high-density development, with apartments in particular, where people just don't have enough room to store it. I'd just like to get your thoughts on a possible alternative to the mini storage, another location, or what might possibly occur there instead of that.
Mr. Hangzinger, I understand your concerns and thoughts and kind of the process of the location of the mini storage shed and being a gateway area, and I understand and see that, and I know first thought was maybe putting some of the higher density residential over in that section, but I know from conversations with the city, the intent is to limit how much residential is actually on that transportation corridor. So our intent of that storage shed was, like you said, kind kind of provide storage for like those apartment complexes, but also it's kind of a nice sound and visual barrier from, with the landscaping and the wall around it, from the busy highway and the noise it creates and the nuisance it could be, as a barrier and buffer between the highway and the residential. So it's kind of a, that's how we envisioned it, was to create that, natural but man-made as well as storage shed facilities, or, indoor storage facilities to create that buffer. We played around with this layout a lot, but this is what we came to be the best fit. We've actually shrunk that storage shed area from the previous site plans, so it's a lot larger. So we have actually gone back with the city to shrink that down, and but still hold it as that use and create that barrier between the highway and our residential use.
One of the possible solutions, or at least a suggestion that I might make would be to just extend the commercial to the eastern boundary, carrying on that same theme. I'm not sure, how that would fit as far as the ordinance is concerned. I'm assuming it would be allowed under the ordinance, and just simply reducing the size of the storage unit and having that wonderful looking commercial front that was displayed here in your presentation. I don't know what your critical mass is for, survivability of the size of the storage facility to make it profitable. And fortunately, that's not my issue as to whether you can make a profit or not. It's the kind of thing, it's not exactly a deal breaker, but I would like to at least have that discussion before the city council and the mayor, and see if they had a similar kind of concern with that, being a gateway use and a look, because I do believe you have some, really attractive ideas on the commercial, and that is certainly needed. I think it's not a loser of a proposition to have that commercial extend over there. Let me at this point ask Ms. Root if that's a viable or a doable alternative to extend that commercial eastwards to the boundary under the ordinance, and the kinds of proportions that we're looking in PUD for different uses. Is that a fit?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, so the highway corridor zone would not preclude that from occurring. Matter of fact, they could have the entire site could be, commercial businesses.
Thank you, Ms. Root. I'd certainly like to contemplate that as part of conditions of approval. I'm just very uneasy with that use, and I won't belabor that point, but the use does have its own inherent problems, and they tend to evolve into unexpected things, is all I'll say about that. So we have an insurmountable problem seemingly with the school district, and by meeting the code way it's laid out, we've addressed the one specific concern they've had about sidewalks, ingress, egress, lighting, so forth, and the provision of bus stops. I wish there were more we could do. Maybe a thought would be to have like a preschool on site. That eventually what we see in the clientele is the younger families moving into a nice subdivision like this, and the, preschool, it might be some thing that could happen, that would, help the school district solve their problems. Just a thought, I don't know if that's, you know, worthy of this context, but just something I'd throw out there. Let's just, jump back to Idaho Transportation Department and their, I-55 requirements. And you understand, the requirements that they're talking about, that, you know, have to be installed with West, Road, and you're all on board with that?
Yeah, we were all on board with,
Okay.
ITD's comments, we're aware and, we'll comply.
Okay, and that doesn't affect your phasing plan at all?
Not necessarily. Their main concern was, the frontage of the sidewalk along, Carter and the timing of that sidewalk. In the letter they provided in the staff report from ITD, they're, with discussions with ITD and, TO Engineers is actually working on the design for this widening project. They're saying it could start from Middleton Road east or westbound around 2024 for the actual widening. And so kind of timing this project and the widening of that road, they said there might be some grade changes with the sidewalk, and it might need to be removed if it's installed along our frontage by the time, ITD widens. So ITD did ask the city to possibly, limit our, sidewalk frontage until that widening project's completed, in 2024 or 2025. And, with their phasing and development, phase one with single family and, phase two where it goes up to, Enclave Avenue there, that eastern approach, those will be about the same time as that widening project's gonna be happening. So that was the main comment that we saw from ITD, that we're happy to comply for, but, they asked the city and us to, look at that because, just be a waste of taxpayer dollars, ultimately what they said bluntly in the letter of putting the sidewalk and ripping it out, putting the sidewalk in. So, we will comply to what ITD would like to see there. And they did ask for another 10-foot temporary easement on top of the easement we gave them. Their main concern was any obstructions of structures, but we just have a landscape buffer there. And, with that landscape buffer, it's plenty of space for the 30-foot, for that 10-foot temporary easement for construction, can be easily replaced and taken out if needed. But most of our frontage won't be built until that phase 4 and 5, which will likely be after that widening project.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald, do you have any, comments, as to reaction to the improvements along West Drive and Highway 55?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I do not have any additional comments. Obviously with Highway 55, carrying the amount of traffic it does and it being an ITD facility, we would certainly defer to ITD's requirements, and recommendations for improvements there in conjunction with this development.
Okay, Mr. McDonald, just what I have here, do you have any other general comments or anything specific to this that I've overlooked?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, at this point, I do not. I feel like the presentation has been thorough and has explained many of the nuances of this site, and so I do not have any further comments.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Root, do you have any further questions of me or solutions here? I think we've pretty well flogged this thing as much as it can bear. Help me out, please.
I would agree. I do not have anything further, other than the items discussed.
Thank you very much, Ms. Root. And now I think I have heard what I need to hear. and, I'll close the testimony portion of this hearing and move to the analysis. First of all, I'd like to note that, I've had discussions, with, Ms. Root in the past 2 days about the order section and the way it was constructed. We have, the order decision, 2 cases here, an annexation with the zone change, with the development agreement, which is typically handled as a single component and a single motion, and a plan unit development, which would be a separate motion. The mayor and council would express a desire to try to consolidate this process in some way, but our discussion was such that the application and the orders and recommendations should be separate, or at least that's my outlook on it. And for a very simple thing, that it's they're 2 different animals. An annexation and a zone change is considerably different in regard and analysis from a plan unit development, even though they go hand in hand. And so we have changed the staff report to reflect 2 different recommendations, one on the annexation and one on the PUD/preliminary plat. And with that, I have developed a number of conditions of approval, or modified some of the conditions of approval, and also staff has made some additions in that regard. So this is going to take a while, and but it's a big project. There's a lot of moving parts here. We have to carefully do this kind of development to ensure that what might be recommended for approval to mayor and council is what we're really all understanding and agree upon. Having said that, first, looking at the staff report, under the section 5.1 on page 18 of the staff report, there's a comprehensive plan analysis. I would like to say, generally speaking, I agree with the goals and policies that support this application, and I concur with staff, but I would like to note on page 21, the goals and policies, community design, goal 1, foster growth and redevelopment in a manner that will enhance and improve the city's visual image. And under that policy, 1.1-3, create aesthetically pleasing entrance corridors into the city. I'd like to note that it is my view of the proposed storage unit that as a gateway, or as stated here, entrance corridor to the city, is not the most fitting use. Also, I concur that in the findings for having to do with school facilities and transportation, staff does note that the Valley View School District has indicated the elementary schools are over capacity currently, et cetera, that I do agree that that goal and policy cannot be met with this application. having said that, moving to page 22, the findings of facts, the Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony in the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. Item 7, conclusions of law. The Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend to the Caldwell City Council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met. The hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. The recommendation, Section 8, based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council that the proposed annexation, and here I move to the new text. A proposed annexation of 45.62 acres, parcels R32795 and R32795-010, with the zone designation of HC Highway Corridor for the purposes of developing a mixed-use commercial and high-density residential planned unit development as Enclave Subdivision be approved, with the conditions of approval listed below to be enumerated in a development agreement. And the new conditions under Section 8, we have 8.2, and I'll just try to breeze through this. Development of the subject property shall be consistent with all requirements, code, rules, and regulations. City of Caldwell is specifically stated otherwise in the annexation development agreement or in the order of decision for the plan unit development and preliminary plat Enclave Subdivision. 8.3. It states the requirement for that development agreement, and I'm trying to condense this. The full text will be in the minutes. Said agreement shall include the conditions of approval for case numbers AN 21-1 and PUD 21-1. 8.4. Failure to comply with the conditions of development provided herein and to develop the property in accordance with the identified development plan for the Enclave Subdivision PUD shall result in the subject property 45.62 acres being reverted to a zoning designation of RS1 residential estates. The zoning designation with least intensive permitted uses, land uses analogous to the original agricultural zone designation, and land use existing prior to the annexation of the property into the city of Caldwell. 8.5, upon failure to comply with the conditions imposed for the Enclave Subdivision PUD decision, the development agreement may be terminated by the city, and the zoning designation upon which the use is based may be reversed upon the failure of the owner, developer, or each subsequent owner or person acquiring an interest in the subject parcel to comply with the commitments in the agreements within 3 years in accordance with Caldwell City Code, Section 10-03-07 PUD, subsection 3R, title expiration. Go to Section 9 is reserved for City Council, their order decision. Go to what is the new Section 10, conditions of planned unit development and preliminary plat. Based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council the case number PUD 21-1, a proposed planned unit development preliminary plat approval of 45.62 acres on parcels R32795 and R32795-010 with a zone designation of HC Highway Corridor for the purpose of developing mixed-use commercial and high-density residential planned unit development as Enclave Subdivision be approved with the conditions of approval listed below to be enumerated in a development agreement. So if anyone is keeping score, following along the staff report, the The following conditions, remain the same, as well as the numbering. We'll change the numbering when this is all over, to reflect an ordinal sequence. Condition 10.2 and conditions 10.4 through 10.17 remain as proposed in the staff report. I will not read through those conditions. Starting with page 25 of the staff report, condition 10.18, 1018. The mini storage facility shall not place, hang or paint signage on the perimeter wall or fencing of the facility. And the items 10.19 through 10.25 shall remain the same. And addressing the modifications to item 10.26. One subdivision entry sign or monument sign may be placed at each entrance of the subdivision or business park. The actual signage area, exclusive monument portion of the structure, shall not exceed 100 square feet, reduced from 200. It may be externally or internally illuminated. Sign permits are required prior to installation, and the sign may not exceed the height of the roof line of the tallest building it serves, as stated in Caldwell City Code 10.02.06, section 4.3. Here are some new conditions added both by myself and staff. But again, the number is going to be item 10.27 is the same. Please bear with me. We're nearing the light at the end of the tunnel here. Item 10.29, developer will provide a detailed phasing plan. Item 10.30, preliminary plat approval of the Enclave Subdivision PUD is valid for 24 months from the date of signature on the approving order of decision, meaning a final plat must be recorded within 24 months of the date of signature on the approving order of decision for the preliminary plat. The first phase of the final plat shall be recorded by May 2nd, 2025, and each subsequent phase shall be recorded within 1 year of the date of the final plat recordation of the prior recorded phase. Item 10.31. Failure to comply with the conditions of development as provided for herein, and to develop the property in accordance with the identified development plan for Enclave Subdivision PUD shall result in the subject property 4.62 acres being reverted to a zoning designation of RS1 residential estates. The zoning designation with least intensity permitted land use analogous to the original agricultural zone designation and land uses existing prior to annexation of the property in the city of Caldwell. Item 10.32, ownership. A planned unit development shall be under single ownership / control during the planning and development stage to ensure that development can be accomplished in a unified manner. A PUD developer may sell a portion of an approved PUD if the purchaser submits a notarized letter to the planning and zoning director stating that he or she reviewed the order of decision, development agreement, phasing plan and all other applicable materials and agrees to comply with all conditions of approval. And I have two more to add from, the hearing discussion tonight. I believe this is 10.33. The applicant will, review the list of commercial uses and, limit those allowed commercial uses, in conjunction, with, the planning and zoning staff. And this, before it goes to city council. And the one we've all been waiting for, item 10.34. And, just gonna make this up, the applicant will develop design guidelines, for both the commercial and residential structures on the site, and provide a clear, design system that will apply to all of the structures. And if I can remember what I said, we're done. With that, I'd like to close the hearing. And Ms. Root, you have a comment?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, before you do that, I just want to clarify that on the condition that, what you indicated, 10.30, the May 2nd, 2025 date is just a guesstimate as to when we might be at city council, so, and then it was 2 years beyond that, so that'll be modified dependent upon when we actually go to city council and have an order of decision.
So just a date established by city council would be a better wording.
Well, once we go, so when this application goes to city council and the order of decision approved or denied or whatever, I would put the appropriate 2-year date from the date of the order of decision.
Okay. I'll change that in 10.30. And with that, I'd like to close this hearing and adjourn for the evening. And thank you all very much for your attendance. And we'll try to get these conditions approved out to you as soon as possible. And take a little bit of work because some of this is done on the fly. But I think the basic understanding is there, what we discussed tonight. And again, thank you very much for your attendance.
totally different district, too, now.